Now available in paperback and ebook, The Man Who Rules the World. John Haynes must bring together men and gods to overcome a threat that seeks to destroy the planet. The Man Who Rules the World. Now available in paperback and e-readers everywhere. Historical Men in Crisis. One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Historical Men in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Historical Men in Crisis series, I'm going to be talking about Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, who are also known as the infamous killers Leopold and Loeb. Now, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb are infamously known for kidnapping and murdering Bobby Franks in what they perceived to be the crime of the century. Now, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb were two young men who thought that they were the smartest men in the room. However, this whole exaggerated perception of self is what led to both of these men winding up on the road to becoming historical men in crisis. Now, Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb were both the sons of wealthy families, and as they were both child prodigies, they were extremely intelligent with book sense, but sadly, neither boy had been taught male life skills or male survival skills by their fathers, and because both of these boys were not taught any sort of male life skills or male life skills as related to navigating life in the world, this is what led to these boys winding up becoming extremely disconnected from people and headed down a road to antisocial behavior. And the parents basically, because they were not in these boys' lives to meet their emotional needs, this is what really, I believe, put these boys on a road to participating in antisocial behavior that they wound up participating in a place I call the secret world, where they felt secure about expressing their natural masculinity and their homosexuality. Now, both Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb, again, as child prodigies, again, their parents were smiling and happy about how intelligent they were regarding book knowledge and how they were basically on the road to graduating in their teens with college degrees, but they couldn't see where their sons were not being developed and nurtured by their parents, who had wound up, again, neglecting their emotional needs while they went on to go on with their personal lives. They basically sent their kids off to different schools as related to going to places like colleges like the university. Leopold went to the University of Michigan and then went on to study at the University of Chicago, and had just, when it came to Leopold, he had already completed a degree at the University of Chicago and was looking to go and plan to go to Harvard Law School after a trip to Europe. And in the case of Richard Loeb, he also was a gifted young man who was out here. He was the son of a wealthy lawyer and a retired vice president of Sears and Roebuck, and again had entered the innovative University High School and was basically encouraged by his governors to complete his high school education. And after completing his high school education, he then became the University of Michigan's youngest graduate. And then after graduating from the University of Michigan, he then was studying at the University of Chicago. And again, both of these men had strong intellectual skills, but sadly didn't have good interpersonal or social skills. And because they didn't have good interpersonal or social skills, this is what led to them entering into the secret world with the idea that they were intellectually superior as men, and believing in the philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche, believing that in the concept that both of them, because they were teenagers who had high intelligence and had graduated from college at a young age, both of these men started to believe in the concept that both of them were supermen. And because they felt that they were supermen, they felt that because of their superior intellects, this allowed them to rise above the laws and rules of people, and believed that they didn't have to follow the rules and law of the land. This is what both Nathan Leopold and Loeb believed as they were living in their whole secret world together. And as they were living in their secret world together, they believed that they could just do whatever they pleased because, one, they were wealthy, two, they had high intellect because this was validated by all of the college degrees that both men received, and as they believed that they were superior in their rose colored reality in their secret world, this is where both of these men started to participate in a pattern of behaviors that liked homosexuality with each other because they believed no woman was going to be fit for them. And then as they started their homosexual relationship, they then escalated their behavior to antisocial behaviors in the secret world, and did this by a series of things such as petty theft and vandalism. And this is where they wound up breaking into a fraternity house in the University of Michigan, stealing some pen knives, a camera, and a typewriter that they used to type the ransom note for the murder of Bobby Franks. And also, as after they got away with that crime that they felt they were entitled to do, this is where they started to escalate their antisocial behavior to going out and participating in other more serious crimes and participated in an arson. However, they soon saw that nobody noticed their crimes, and mostly I believe that they didn't notice their crimes because of the white privilege. But this was what was the catalyst for them escalating their crimes and looking to execute what they believed to be a sensational, perfect crime, a perfect crime that they believed would get them the attention that they wanted and confirm to everyone that they were Supermen. And this is where both of these beta males wanted to go out and make their mark in the world. They wanted to make their mark in the world not by showing how intelligent they were as related to creating innovations in the world. No, what they wanted to do was go out here and participate in antisocial behavior to basically show how powerful they were as Supermen. But these beta males really weren't showing how powerful they were. Ironically, what they were doing as they were participating in these crimes was basically giving power to people, giving power to the masses because they wanted their attention and didn't want to put the work in or the effort to show how intelligent they truly were by making a great contribution to society. No, with these beta males, again, they wanted to go out here and go and do something infamous to get fame because it was an easy thing to do, and it was easy in comparison to the work that they would have to do by building actual social and interpersonal relationships with people in places like academia, which is something that they both could have done. They both could have easily just gone out here and used their gifts and abilities to get the attention of those in social circles. But both of these men, because they were, again, living in their rose-colored reality of looking to be supermen in an infamous fashion, basically became supervillains, and supervillains who acted with malice aforethought at 19 and 18 years old, looking to murder a young adolescent as their perfect crime. Now, both of these men spent 7 months planning everything from their plan to abduct the individual to disposing of the body, and look to go out here and do this under the guise of a kidnapping and a ransom. So this is what they used the typewriter that they stole from the fraternity house to do. And then they also purchased a chisel and wanted to use that as the weapon. And they also had bought rope and all these different things to plan the murder to take the life of this child. And as they were out here looking for their victim, they were on the guards of the Harvard-Kenwood area. And this is where they found the son, Robert Bobby Franks, the 14-year-old son of a watch manufacturer. And Bobby was just a kid, just, again, out and about in 1924, and this is where Leopold and Loeb then got a car that they rented, and then they offered Bobby Franks a ride. Then when he refused that, they basically, because his house was 2 blocks away, this is where they persuaded him to enter the car to talk about a tennis racket, and they used this to kidnap Bobby Franks, kidnap him, and then hit it, and then continue to go out and attack him in the back seat. This is where, again, Loeb was in the back seat, and he wound up attacking Bobby Franks, and then attacked Bobby Franks, hit him in the head several times with a chisel, then dragged him in the back seat where they gagged him until he was dead. And with the boy in the car, what they did was look to go to Wolf Lake. And when they went to Wolf Lake, this is where they removed and got rid of Bobby Frank's clothes, and then concealed them in a culvert along the Pennsylvania Railroad tracks, and then poured hydrochloric acid on his face and his genitals, and basically just again mutilated this boy's body. Basically because they could do whatever they felt like they could do whatever they pleased, and do whatever they pleased to this boy as related to his body, because they didn't regard his life, and they didn't regard his life because they believed they were supermen, and they felt they had a right to go out here and take this boy's life. And as they did this, Bobby Franks was said to be missing, and this is where Leopold then made a call to his mother, calling himself George Johnson, and told him that their son had been kidnapped, and then sent them a ransom note. After they went out here and burned the blood-stained clothing and cleaned the stains from the rented vehicles upholstery, and then after murdering this boy, destroying the evidence, this is where they spent the remainder of the day playing cards, whereas Bobby Frank's parents were scrambling to try to get the money together for this ransom. But the whole plan wound up falling apart when a relative forgot the address of the store he was supposed to receive the next set of directions, and the whole plan fell apart when the Superman's grand plan fell apart when Bobby Frank's body had been found. And this is where Leopold and Loeb destroyed the typewriter and burned a car robe, which was a lap blanket back in the day for those old cars they used to move the body, and then tried to go on with their life as usual. However, the so-called intelligent Leopold and Loeb basically fumbled everything because one of them left their glasses inside of that whole situation with Bobby Frank's body, and as they found the glasses with the body, they quickly did go out here and find the evidence of these glasses. They found that the hinge on the glass was one that was connected to Leopold, and Leopold basically thought he could get away with this crime by saying his glasses dropped out of his pocket during a bird watching trip during the previous weekend. However, eventually, after they found evidence in the car, they soon started to find more evidence that connected Leopold and Loeb to the murder, and they soon found the destroyed typewriter in Jackson Park Lagoon. So eventually, after finding all of this overwhelming evidence, this is where Leopold and Loeb both wound up going and confessing to the crime of murdering Bobby Franks, saying that Leopold planned everything as related to the crime, and then both men wound up making a confession that wound up could have led to both of these men in the electric chair, could have wound up with both of them in the electric chair. But however, after pleading guilty, this is where their defense attorney, Clarence Darrow, made what was considered to be a historical long plea for leniency in this case. And after making that whole speech that went on for several hours, this is where both Leopold and Loeb managed to avoid getting the death penalty, which was popular at the time. Both of these wealthy white males wound up getting sentences of life in prison, plus 99 years, and they got sentences of life in prison, plus 99 years. And this is where the supermen basically found out the realities of life as related to being regular men, in that when men go out here and they participate in criminal behavior, they are going to have to deal with the consequences of their behavior. And when it came to both Leopold and Loeb, they found out that in the real world, people are held accountable for their criminal behavior. Now, both of these males, again, coming from a world of white privilege, thought that they had basically been spared as related to the crime that they had been spared as related to the crimes that they had committed, and basically just or were put in prison. And after they were put in prison, quickly, Loeb, Richard Loeb, was shanked in jail, and he was shanked in jail and wound up losing his life because he had basically got into it with another prisoner, James Day, and after being attacked with a straight razor in the shower room by James Day, this is where Loeb wound up dead. He wound up dead, and basically this is because James Day said that Loeb, who basically made a sexual advance towards him, and as he made the sexual advance towards him, this is what James Day said he had to do in self-defense. Went into self-defense as related to things, and participated in the murder of Loeb. And when this basically led to him getting acquitted for the crime because the court said it was self-defense, and this is where Richard Loeb met his end as a man who thought he was a superman, but basically when he went into the prison, basically wound up not being super at all. No, he was basically shown to be a regular man who was on the road to being a man in crisis. A man in crisis due to the fact that he was not raised by his parents or given any sort of nurturing or care. And as he grew up, and again had a lot of book sense, didn't have any critical thinking skills as related to life, and did not have parents to basically teach him about life in the real world. And because his parents didn't teach him about life in the real world, this is what led to Richard Loeb winding up with his life ending in 1936. His life ending in 1936 as a man in crisis, that shows us the worst about human behavior. Now, when it came to Nathan Leopold, he wound up spending a longer time in prison, and as he was in prison, he wound up suffering from depression, but eventually became a model prisoner, as related to volunteering for Stateville malaria penitentiary study, and also after having malaria injected him, continued to work in prison by trying to create an environment where inmates could get an education, and also went on to try to help them with other things as related to the prison. Continued to go out here, and he went to the situation in Puerto Rico. I mean, he continued to try to go out here and try to help people after participating in this heinous crime, and went out here and continued to try to atone for his crimes as a man, as related to things. And after a time, he wound up being paroled in about 1958. He wound up being paroled, and then basically wound up with a Church of the Brethren affiliated program. Went to work as a medical technician in Puerto Rico, and it was there that he basically wound up spending the last of his days trying to atone for his crimes by going out and creating a Leopold Foundation funded by royalties of his book Life Plus 99 Years to aid emotionally disturbed, handicapped, or delinquent youths, and basically went out here and he spent the last of his days, eventually got married to a widowed florist, and continued on getting a master's degree at the University of Puerto Rico, where he taught classes, eventually became a researcher at the Social Service Program for Puerto Rico's Department of Health, and also conducted studies in the University of Puerto Rico School of Medicine. I mean, this guy, Nathan Leopold, basically tried to turn his life around and also continued to study the birds in the area, and was out here looking with the intentions to write a book regarding about the birds of Puerto Rico. But eventually what happened to Nathan Leopold is that he managed to live a little bit of a full life towards the end of his life before he died in 1971 at the age of 66 due to a heart attack. And basically both of these men could have gone on to greater things had they had parents that actually invested time in them, instead of governesses that, like I talk about in The Man Crisis, where a lot of these kids get involved with childcare and then they don't bond with their parents. And because they don't bond with their parents, what those kids do is become extremely antisocial. And that's what we see here in the case of both Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb. Both of these men became extremely antisocial individuals because their parents were not actively involved in their life when they were boys. And even though both of these boys were extremely gifted, because there was no parents in their lives to teach them about how the world works or how life works in the real world, what happened to both Nathan Leopold and Richard Loeb is that they didn't grow up to become healthy men. No, what happened to both of these boys is that they wound up growing up to become men in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to boys winding up on the road to becoming men in crisis, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com and learn how to identify all of the antisocial behaviors that boys learn growing up that puts them on the road to dysfunction. And hopefully you can put a stop to those behaviors by identifying them early enough and hoping to get those boys' lives in order. And you can find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers such as Barnes & Noble, Draft the Digital, and Google Play, in addition to Amazon.com. And you can find other men's issues books that can transform a man's life. You can find all those books at Amazon.com and other online booksellers, and you can find them all over the world. And these books have transformed lives, and they can possibly transform your life and help you become a better man. Now, this was a video requested by a viewer, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation for a minimum of $15 to the PayPal or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Illuminati, the man who rules the world, takes on the head of the global elite in this all-new action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Get your copy of John Haynes' Illuminati in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.